Good morning. I'm Neha Man, a UX designer and researcher. This video is to share my contribution to DMI's Academic Design Management Conference 2020. I co-authored this paper with Sebastian Ramirez Loaiza and Professor Claudia Rebola. Our paper is titled Mediating Piatt Park, and I will be sharing how we went about addressing crime-prone public spaces through design. Piatt Park is a beautiful park in downtown Cincinnati. It stretches for 2 blocks in the heart of the city and provides a perfect space to rest. It has a green corridor of trees giving shade and plenty of seating area. It is, in fact, Cincinnati's oldest park and holds the city's heritage. Here's a side by side shot, decades apart. Recently, the park has become a hotspot for notorious problems, including loitering and drug usage, which affects the quality of life of residents and visitors of downtown Cincinnati. The City of Cincinnati Police Department and the Cincinnati Parks Department have been looking for ways to mediate the dynamic of Piatt Park. Over the last few years, many organizations have addressed the situation, but the majority of proposals recommend substantial shifts in environmental design and require high infrastructural modifications. The park is situated close to the public library, providing easy access to water, privacy, and electricity. In fact, many people have reportedly overdosed in the bathroom of the public library. The city has taken many steps to improve the environmental design of these spaces to tackle these issues, but the problems seem to evolve and persist. The park infrastructure is also such that there are several hidden nooks and pockets for people to spend long hours. The police has also reported that people often hide contraband in the planters that surround the park ledges. Moreover, the park itself is surrounded by narrow alleys, which provide secluded areas for criminal activities. And lastly, the park visitors are loyal and like to spend hours at the park in each visit. This has resulted in a close community feeling ownership of the park. So, any other visitor that passes by the narrow stretch of the park can feel all eyes on them like a runway. This can be a very vulnerable position. With these issues in mind, we could identify three top problem areas. The first was comfort. Well, the park is too comfortable and is resulting in people spending long hours, sometimes even beyond closing hours. The second is invisibility. The park provides invisibility in that there is a lack of authority to surveil the park. Even if there is authority, it is easy to conceal contraband. And finally, ownership. A small group of people who visit the park every day or may possibly be staying in the park make others feel like outsiders. In order to change this dynamic, we needed to make the park less comfortable, in a sense that there is more to do and less to idle around. We needed to make everyone feel seen, to reduce the preferability of the park as a crime zone, and we needed to balance the ownership of the park among its current and its new visitors. To tackle these issues, the course was structured into three phases: learn, construct, and apply. In the learn phase, students visited the site for observations and documentation. It was essential for the study to make direct contact with different stakeholders in order to empathize with their perceptions of the public space. The first group of people that we interviewed was park visitors. We interviewed 5 park visitors for 20 to 30 minutes per interview with a short, semi structured questionnaire. The second group of people who were interviewed were residents. They had been noticeably averse to the activities at the park. A student was able to conduct one in depth interview with a willing resident of the area. The park is located in the center of a busy street and surrounded by businesses. Some of these businesses, including LPK, a design agency located next to the park, Garfield Store, a corner store that is the main source of food and beverage for the park, Cincinnati Public Library, and the police officers stationed at the park were interviewed. Graffiti walls are a great tool to provide an open canvas on which participants can freely offer their written or visual comments about a prompt or question. An extension of the graffiti wall was also installed in the form of 3D handcrafted question marks that were placed inside and outside the park. The question mark had a QR code at the bottom, which allowed people to scan and answer the questions from their phone. The next tool we utilized was video observations. We sampled structured recordings for 3 to 4 hours for 2 weeks from inside the Cincinnati Public Library, which faces the park. And finally, to gather a mass perception of Piatt Park, a quantitative survey was conducted in a 1 mile radius around the park. It gathered 40 responses in a 1.5 mile stretch from Washington Park to Smale Park. Using the learnings from these research methods, we developed 5 user personas of the park visitors. There were two negative personas. The first was Loitering Luke, a teenager who is considered the troublemaker by everyone alike. The second negative persona is Gambler Gill. He is a middle aged person who is indulging in gambling, soliciting, drug exchange, and is often aggressive. Neutral personas were also identified. The first is Fighter Pam. This person is homeless and spending most of their days smoking or drinking in the park. They are still considered neutral as they do not disturb the park environment. They do break the law. The second neutral persona is Regular Rob. They are regular at a park and they are not disturbing the environment. The last persona is Scared Suzanne, who is a positive persona. She is the resident of the surrounding apartments or an office worker at the surrounding businesses. She is intimidated by the people in the park and does not want to walk her dog there anymore. A few significant points in our research helped us uncover the depth of a persona that was initially labeled as a troublemaker. Loitering Luke has come from a tough past and usually resorts to conforming teenage behaviors to be a vital part of his large group. They indulge in illegal activities as the park doesn't really offer any alternative activities. They're stigmatized and have always been labeled the bad kid, and we knew our project shouldn't perpetuate that stigma. Similar to Pyre or Pam, regular Rob is a regular at the park and spends most of their time there. However, this persona is pivotal in understanding the negative enablers of the park and the city. This helped us realize the study needed to make the park inviting and respectful for everyone, even if they're considered a troublemaker. The 4 pillars of deteriorating dynamic of Piatt Park were identified. These 4 pillars are authority. At the time, the park users and the team both felt the lack of authoritarian figures at the park. However, working with the Cincinnati Police Department, it was already established that they were low on resources to station officers for preventative crimes. The team suggested establishing a perceived presence of authorities. The second factor is engagement. The residents and other visitors had expressed their feelings of vulnerability when crossing the park. People need to be invited into the park and engaged to rework the dynamic of the park. The next factor is pedagogy. The blatant disobedience of the park rules or simply missing the signage was evident in the behaviors of the park users. Strategically, it was addressed that the signage needed to be more inclusive, inviting everyone to the park rather than excluding certain individuals. The fourth and final factor was ownership. A lot of park users expressed deep rooted ownership of the park. These were people inhabiting the park indefinitely. But with the park being crowded with inhabitants and troublemakers, the residents and the people working around the park felt unwelcome in the park. With these 4 pillars of opportunity established, a system of interventions had to be developed, which, when implemented in phases, could gradually mediate the challenges of Piatt Park. We came up with and tested 2 interventions. The first was interactive signage. The existing signage in the park were thoughtfully designed with dark green to be harmonious with the foliage in the park and not disrupt the natural aesthetic. However, the data analysis established that these signs were highly overlooked by the park visitors. The new signage system had to convey the rules, not disrupt the park visually, and introduce new park etiquette. The following changes were proposed in the signage. The park was divided into 4 engagement zones. Signage was utilized to visually differentiate these park zones that provide different interactions. We tested multiple games of different fidelities across time at the park. The results confirmed that a simple on ground game could occupy and distract visitors from negative behaviors. The proposal was also distinguished by rephrasing the messaging of the signage as reinforcements of positive behavior instead of prohibiting negative behaviors. So instead of saying no smoking, no alcohol, no drinking, a sign in Piatt Play could say, "This is the kids zone. Please be mindful of your behaviors." So this message really hinged on the purpose of the zone to establish an ideal code of conduct. It was also observed that park users indulged in negative behaviors in areas where the signs were not visible. The proposal involved suggesting contextual placement of the signage to where the rules are being broken. An error in contextual placement was recognized at the curbside accessible entrance to the park. This became a prominent spot from where bikers would bring their bikes to the park, which was strictly prohibited. A special signage was designed to differentiate these zones at the point of entry. The visual language of the proposed signage was driven by the colors of the different engagement zones. The signs were designed with four accent colors that marked each zone: play, sing, pet, and learn. Another area of opportunity was the engagement of multiple stakeholders. The residents living around the park reported being intimidated by the people and activities in the park. They would frequently call the police and report misdemeanors. To address these issues while encouraging the vigilante behavior of the park, the concept of a mobile app was designed. Chirp is a mobile app that engages residents to take action when they observe misdemeanors. The residents can play a pre recorded message in the park, which will be equipped with concealed ambient speakers. On noticing misdemeanors, the app allows the users to simply report what they notice. This includes the type of misdemeanor, some details, and location. However, the user flow of the app withholds the decision of what message will play in the park. A set of messages was sourced to address different behaviors by different personas that were identified. Different messages were edited and played in the park through concealed speakers to test the reaction of the park visitors. The final messages were categorized as emotional, educational, and informational. When a misdemeanor is reported on the app, it prompts a series of questions that are intended to qualify the chirp as legitimate. For example, if a biker is reported in the park, a quick survey confirms if the person is in the park or on the periphery. On successfully qualifying as a misdemeanor, the reporter answers a few questions to generate a targeted message. These extra steps are integrated in the reporting process to maintain the quality of the reports. Given the risk that app users may report too often, disrupting the peaceful environment of the park, a limit restriction had to be added. Similarly, a message wouldn't play in an area if someone else has recently reported the same misdemeanor. It is also an effort to reduce the possibility of harassing someone in the park. Our system of interventions was shared with the stakeholders, the Cincinnati Police Department, 3CDC, Parks Department of Cincinnati, and residents before moving to a refined design stage. The great news is that the interactive signage is being adapted right now. The designs are being finalized and the zones will be implemented soon. Our research has also led to the conclusion that every modification or intervention in the space will impact the social dynamics. Thus, the goal should be respectful and enabling of healthy social interactions. Positive enablers disable negative behaviors. Even though this may seem like a tautology, but this was a pivotal distinction we made to focus on changing enablers rather than behaviors. We used the combi model of behavior change to capacitate the visitors, even the troublemakers, to indulge in positive activities. We identified opportunities of growth for each persona and we studied their motivations to understand them as dimensional beings. I'm going to take a quick minute to introduce the team. Sebastian Ramirez Loaiza is my friend and peer. He's an industrial designer and now a PhD student at University of Cincinnati. Please visit his work at sebastianrl.com. Professor Claudia Rebula is the faculty who taught the Urban Mediated Environments course. I am Neha Man. I'm a UX designer and a researcher. You can find my work at nehaman.com. I'm present in the audience today and I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.